Hi, and welcome to the Undiluted Love Show. I am Latoya Clarke Grant. Back in 2015, my life took a huge turn, and I want to share with you that story. I want to share with you what God has been doing behind the scenes to restore, rekindle, and reconnect love. God is love. He is the one behind the unfiltered, the undiluted love. He is the one that has called us for such a time as this. This time when we're in a dispensation where the world is seeing so much hate, so much worry, so much depression, anxieties all over. We are even hit now with a pandemic. But God is still in the midst of us, and He's working. And now it's a time where He wants His sons and His daughters to manifest all that He's doing and what He has done in the earth realm. So here is my story, the undiluted truth, the undiluted story that God has started back in 2015. And I want to just take you on that journey with me. There are many misconceptions when it comes to relationship and marriage. I remember as a child, I did not have the luxury of having a father in the house. But at no point was I ever depressed or believed that I was not having the best life possible. I remember I would normally have conversation with God. As young as I would be, I always knew that there's a God. There's always a superior being, and I'll always talk to Him as Daddy, as my Father, without even, I've not yet even started my life to God, but I knew that there was someone who was listening. And so I remember having a conversation one day, just looking at everything that was happening around me, and I said, God, I would love to have a family that is definitely one the world will look at and say, yes, this is the true replica of a family. And I asked Him for a partner. At that time, I was 16 years old. I thought it was time for me just to have someone to share life with. And again, I'm going to be very candid here. It was not about any the sexual relationship. I was grown in church, but I also believe that there came a point in my life where I wanted someone to relate to. And so I remember asking, praying this particular prayer. I said, God, I want someone that's cute, that's calm, that's collective, that's a Christian. Of course, I forgot about one C, which is cashy. So we're still working on that. And so this young man, he was always been going to my church. He's been there, and I've never seen him in this light until I prayed that prayer. It was just a very casual prayer, but I really meant it from my heart, and God heard me. And I don't know how many of you've prayed throughout your life, and you have seen where God come through for you just instantly, immediately. The scales have been removed from your eyes. And so I remember going back to church that following Sunday, and this young man who I've always just seen, never ever looked at him with a second stare, he suddenly seemed to be the one for me. And I was very bold, and I walked up to him and I said, listen, I believe you're my husband. And so he was shocked. Yes, he was very shocked. He was like, okay, what are you talking about? It took him 1 year actually to get back to me. And that was fine, because in that time, it was more of my flesh wanting to be with someone rather than actually allowing God to direct the relationship. Little did I know that this was an ordained relationship that God Himself had in the blueprint. This is a relationship that He wanted, that He designed to be at the forefront, to be at to direct marriages, to direct relationships. And so after a year, we started to have a conversation, a relationship. But in the back of my mind, there was always more to life than just having a child and just living, just going through life. And so I started to ask God for things. I started to ask Him to change me, to transform my life, to take me to a new level where it's all about Him. And so back in 2011, I had a deep prayer or deep one-on-one conversation with God. I was struggling just to be walking upright with Him. I was struggling because there then I was not married. And so this was definitely outside of the will of God. And so I said to Him, I want you to change my life. I don't mind if you relocate me to anywhere in the world so I can get me together. And I promise you that I will serve you for the rest of my life. The short of it is, within a few months, I applied for a job in the Cayman Islands, and I did get that job. And so I traveled to the Cayman Islands in 2011. Within 3 months of being on island, I actually was converted. I resurrendered my life to God. He just called me. That's an entirely different story, how that all happened. But that was just the beginning of what God was about to do in my life. And I was not even yet fully aware of what he's doing. And so I walked away from the relationship. My son's dad, then we just decided, this is it, we're just gonna call it quits. And so we decided to go our opposite way and try to start life with other folks. It didn't work. And I don't know how many times, we've been asking God for a particular thing. We have our checklist, our criteria, what our perfect spouse should be like. And we're not even looking at what's in front of us. And that's what happened to me. I was like, okay, God, I need this. I remember one particular instance, I was at a youth program back in the Cayman Islands. And the question was asked, what's the ideal spouse for you? And persons were answering. And of course, this is like cliche. This is like, oh, just roll off your tongue. I want him to be tall, dark, and handsome. And so that was my response. I did not think about it. Okay, what is it behind the tall, dark, and handsome? What are the qualities that you're looking for? I never ever thought about all this. And so, of course, you know that the enemy also listens to what you're saying. Because he never knows your future, but he knows what's being released over your life, the words that you speak. That's what he will act on, including your past. And so he uses that loophole now based on what I uttered out of my mouth, what that I wanted. And of course, the opportunity came that, yes, there comes a gentleman that I believe, okay, this is it. And so I fell in love real quickly. I fell in love and I started to give myself in so many ways that's so unbecoming of a woman of God. And that's something that many persons don't talk about, especially those that are in the church. How do you deal with when the flesh arises? How do you deal with trying to understand who you are and come into your true identity as a woman of God or as a man of God when you're trying to search for your spouse or try to wait on God? Yes, we know the scripture, they that wait upon the Lord, they shall renew their strength. But when the flesh is rising, what do you do? And so these are some of the areas that we definitely will be looking into. I mean, you can be saved, single, but you're still fully horny. Again, I'm very candid here. But how do you handle that as a Christian? And so these are some of the things that we'll be looking at throughout this show as well. But I want to get back to my story because I want to tell you what God did, how he basically transformed my life for me to be able to speak to you so freely, so transparently, telling you exactly what he did. And so I started to live a particular lifestyle that was definitely not the way God intends. He has called us to a place of holiness, and we can't do anything on our own, and we have to depend truly on the Holy Spirit. And so I was just going all over the place, just trying to find me. And so I was just submitting myself to this gentleman and just ready to say yes at any point if he asks for my hand in marriage. And so I was being a wife without a covenant. I was being a wife without submitting to God, without even asking God, is this your will for me? And so everything, it felt good, because I tell you, sin will feel good. It felt so good. I was going places. I was having the best of things. I was living a luxury lifestyle. And so things started to take a turn, and I felt really good. I remember, and I'm getting to this because there's so much I can say behind this, but the essence of this is I had a very short prayer one January morning. And even though I was not living my life the way God wanted it to, again, remember, I'd surrendered to God. And so I'm going to be real with you all. So here it is that I will be going to choir practice, that I'll be rehearsing, that, I'll be probably called to prayer meeting, and I'll be slain in the spirit, but I can't wait to get out of the church to be all wrapped up in those sheets. And so I was wrapped up in sin. I was just walking around undelivered, in a place of bondage, not knowing who I am and not knowing how to control my life, control my flesh, and just submitting to God. And so I was there driving one morning. It was a January morning I will never, ever forget. And I said this one line. I said, God, if there's anything in my life that you did not approve, I give you full authority to remove it. I said that, but can I be really frank with you? When I prayed that simple prayer, it had nothing to do with this guy, because for me, it was perfect. It was like, this is the life. And so within 24 hours, my entire life changed. It went from real 100 to 0 real quickly. It was domino effect immediately. And I was in tears, I was crying, I was bawling, I was screaming. I was like, what is this? What happened in my life? What allowed this to take place for the guy that I'm thinking this is it? Just everything just changed overnight. And I heard a still voice, and that's when I started to accept the Holy Spirit, that he has always been there, just trying to get my attention. He's always speaking. He said, you gave me permission. You gave me authority to remove what I did not approve. And there's a will for your life, and you have been walking in the permissive will and not the perfect will all this time. You have been wanting what you want and not what I want. And I know even now many of you are saying, hey, I can relate to this, because I've had a few relationships that did not work out, and I know that God was not in it. It's basically what I wanted at the time. And so many times church, yes, and will push you to a place where you believe that marriage is the answer to your sexual pleasure or to the flesh. And that's not the case. There's far more to marriage than sex. As a matter of fact, some folks will even say sex is overrated. But that's also another topic that we are going to touch on throughout this show. And so I really had to take a step back. I had to take a step back and find me. And if we go to the very foundation when God created this earth, you know that when he formed man, he said, very good. Everything about man was good, very good. It was not just normal, like, yeah, that's all right. It was perfect. We were created in his image. We had his thinking, the capacity just to be able to relate to him. A matter of fact, when he formed man, and when he said, Adam, listen, I want you to name the animals. This is a man that was unlearned. He's just coming on the scene. And yes, he was able to actually relate and move in the Spirit of God, where he had such intellectual capacity to name every single animal. But there was something that was missing, and God knew this. In Adam, he understood then what his role is, his purpose, what the work that God gave him, and that was just to stand in his identity and do whatever God called him to do at that time. However, God said, hey, something is missing. And so, of course, he created and he formed the woman. And when I started to think back on this story and my life, I realized that all this time that God had it all in his plan, his original design, that here's my husband and here I am. And he's just waiting on that merging where we come into full obedience and hear his voice. And so, yes, the man is created and he's placed in position. He's given a mandate. He's given a work to do. And then when the woman comes alongside this man, what did God say? He said, listen, you're now a helpmate. I'm giving you this mate, this woman to help you so you can now walk in your true purpose. That know you have someone that can stand alongside you and know you now become not just two, but one. And so all this time, when I look back at my life, I have been operating outside of the approved man for me. And so, yes, it may feel as if I wasted time. And yes, we do. It's like the children of Israel just going around the wilderness, just wandering over and over, giving themselves all over the place. And I felt like that, like I was just going all over the place. And I know many of you right now, you can relate to the fact that you have wasted time with the wrong folks. You have taken on people that have like projects. I don't know. There are persons who have taken on men or women, and they say, oh, I'm taking on this project, and you try to fix them, but you cannot fix what's not for you. You cannot mend what's never meant for you. And so here it is that I tried to fix guys. I want to fix them for me, and it never worked out, because you cannot undo the hand of God. Whatever is written in that blueprint, that's final. And so back to my story real quickly, I was able to find myself at a place where I was so broken. I was completely broken because now I understood that all this time I was just walking after my own shadow. I wasn't going after the voice and the instruction of God. It was just me, what I wanted. And hey, hashtag power couple, that kind of thing that I wanted. And God was like, no, there's a purpose for your life. But until we come into that true identity of who we are, when we come into that place where we are whole in God, where we are fully standing in His promises, we're standing in all the principles that He has aligned for our lives, we'll never know who we are. We'll never ever walk into that full purpose. And so I remember when after that prayer and everything started to crash in my life, and yes, I tried to mend things. Yes, I wanted to do things my way, and God said no. And so back in 2015, at this time, I took a trip to Jamaica, where my son's dad lived, and I remember he asked me a question after being 4 to 5 years being away from him. He asked, is it possible for us to go out on a dinner date? I was like, you must be crazy. Why are we going to go out? We are no longer together. Because at the back of my mind, even though things have gone AY with this guy, I was thinking probably there is a possibility that things can be, we can mend things. But deep within, I knew it was definitely not of God, because during this time, the Lord was just showing me some dreams and visions, and He was like calling me back to a place of reconciliation with Him. He's like, I want your heart. I want your heart. Your heart should be beating for me. I want you to know me. I want you to come to the place where you're fully dependent on me, so I can tell you what you're supposed to do, who you're supposed to be with, and what your true purpose is. And so I remember just saying yes to that dinner date, because the reason behind it, he said, hey, we haven't celebrated, your birthday in over 4 years. And, your son, he lives with me, and I want to be able to talk to you about what has been happening with him. Of course, I'm not going to give up a good dinner date just to talk about my son. As a matter of fact, it's been years, and I know at the back of my mind, I don't want to have anything to do with this man. I know where my heart seemed to be at, so I was like, okay, let's do this. And I remember we got to this nice restaurant in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And as soon as I walked in, I recognized that the ambience was quite different. And so I was saying, something is off, but nonetheless, I'm good, because listen, wherever my cell phone is, I'm going to be taking a good bunch of selfies. And so I was just all about the selfies for me, and I was kind of thinking in the back of my head, I wish my son was actually by my side, so at least I could have some photos when I get back to the Cayman Islands to, look at my photos. And so I sat there, and I noticed that, as I was sitting at the table, that no one came and asked me what I wanted. And so all my favorite food was just being placed in front of me. I was like, okay, I'm seeing my wine that I love. I'm seeing shrimp. I'm like, okay, where's the menu? Nonetheless, I just kept eating. I'm like, all right. There was pretty much no conversation, so it was a lot of dead space. I'm like, okay, and like, all right, what are we doing? And he asked me a question. He said, what's the one thing that you would want right now? And I was just being very frank. I said, listen, I wish my son was here so we'd be taking some selfies right now. That's all I want. He said, okay, I can get that done. Now, where my son was at the time, it was 16 miles outside of the city, and it would be impossible, basically, just for him to be there in the snap of a finger. And so he said, close your eyes. And I laughed. I'm like, okay, you must be Santa Claus. And so I closed my eyes, and everything changed. I noticed there was a hush, and then I heard a song, Thinking Out Loud, playing. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Open your eyes. I did. When I opened my eyes, there he was on his knees. My son to my side, right, clad, fully dressed, tears streaming down his face, and hubby on his knees, asking me for my hand in marriage. Can I tell you, I heard nothing he said. But I heard the still voice of God saying, you better say yes. You better say yes. And can I tell you that it's the best yes? Second to the yes of God, of course. that I've said in my life, and I've not looked back. I can tell you it has not been easy, because even in that moment when I said yes, we're not able to even embrace each other. Remember now, we have not been together for 4 or 5 years, so everything felt so strange. I thought I was just in a weird dream. This could not be happening. This is making absolutely no sense. And so we just stood there staring at each other, tears streaming down his face and mine as well. I was trying to understand what's going on. And as we went back to the car with my son, and we sat there for hours, and we began to just go through everything that just happened. I'm like, okay, tell me what just happened. What is this? Why am I wearing a ring? Why did I say yes? What happened? And why was I led to say yes? And we just started to spill. And I started to share with him real briefly, not going into details, what my life has been like, and what he started to share about his life as well. And the short of it is, he said to me that he was there in prayer one day, and he heard the still voice, "Go get your wife." I shared with him in that moment that weeks before that, I had a dream. And in that dream, I remember being in a wedding gown. And as I was approaching the altar, and I saw a gentleman that seemed to be tall, dark, and handsome. And I was like, in my back of my mind, in that dream, like, yes, okay, this is it. But I had a veil over my face, and somehow I could not see the face of this gentleman. And so when I got to the altar and he lifted the veil, I was staring into the face of my son's dad. Listen, I got out of that dream and I said, God, what's going on? What is going on? And I want to tell someone even now that there are times that the Lord will be speaking to you. He'll be giving you little nuts, and he'll download it in your spirit, the direction for your life. But because you're resisting, because you're still in your flesh, you still want to do what you want to do, there's always going to be that length of time where it's going to take you between the promise and the actual manifestation of the promise. That process that you go through depends on how much you're going to resist or how much you're going to obey the voice of God. And so that yes was just the beginning of everything for my life. I started to hear God so much more. I surrendered to him completely, and it was not easy. When I returned to the Cayman Islands, I did not spend much longer there. I believe I spent 3 months, the max there, and then I migrated to Florida. And being in Florida was an entirely new process for me, a new journey with God. I remember when I landed in Miami airport, I said to him, Father, this is my life right now. I want you to completely transform me and do whatever you want to do with my life. I'm ready to just be that vessel, that touch point for the Holy Spirit here in the earth realm. And he heard my prayer because it was coming from a place of truth. I've been through so much brokenness, rejection, abuse, and hurt. I was just over it. And if he was able to speak so clearly, that moment when my husband proposed to me, I'm like, yes, this God, he is everything. He is the real deal. He forgives all the mess. He's the one that redeems us. His grace is so sufficient that it takes me from a place where I'm no longer thinking of that, hey, I'm so broken that I can't operate or be used for his purpose. And so when I just started my journey in Florida, I said yes to him on so many levels. And so 1 year, almost a year after, we still weren't married. And he's in Jamaica and I'm in Florida. So this is another segment that I'll be touching on, long distance relationship. Because even now, we're in 2020. We've been married since 2016, and we still have not been together. And that's an entirely new episode, how we actually maintain, how we hold on to God all this time for us to actually have such a strong bond and be able to be assisting others even through their marriage, even though my husband and I are miles apart. but it's all the grace of God. You see, there's such a unique grace on our life that has actually allowed us to be impactful in so many areas as it relates to relationship, marriage, and even those that are single. When we were about to decide on getting married, being here, I'm like, okay, God, if you could just allow an opportunity where my husband could come and so we could get married and just move on with life. He said, no, that's not how I want it. And so nothing seemed to be working out in terms of getting things together. Okay, where are we going to get married? He still didn't have a visa, and I would have to probably travel to Jamaica. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, it's better to do it here in the U.S. And the Lord was saying no. So I remember I traveled down to Jamaica, and I accompanied my husband to the U.S. Embassy. And as I sat outside and I watched him walking across just to go in for his interview, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying to me, that's not how it's going to go. And I'm like, but God, we just spent our money. Like, why is it not going to work out? He said, this is not the way I want it to be. And prior to that, I remember just before I traveled to Jamaica, Juanita Bynum's song that says, I don't mind waiting. And it was just ringing in my spirit. And I downloaded that song and I was just playing it over and over. And just before the interview, when we were driving up to Kingston, Jamaica, my husband switched the music that was on, and I heard, I don't mind waiting. I was like, babe, where did you get that song? Why are you playing that? He said just a few days before, he heard the song and he had to go search for it. He has never heard the song before and he heard it clear in his spirit. I'm like, okay, God, what are you up to? And in that moment, I understood that he wanted us to wait. It was never about us. You see, there's so much strength that you gain when you wait on God. There's so much, the true purpose of God comes alive in your waiting. And it's never about us wanting things to go our way. It's about his timing, and his timing is very perfect. And so I remember, when my husband, when he walked out of the embassy with his head hanging down, and he said, babe, I didn't get it. I said, I know. God said, we're being disobedient. That's not it. He's been speaking. And the Lord speaks through different ways. And he did speak that morning. And I remember we drove down to the Devon house, and we were there. We sat, and for a moment I wanted to cry because I was like, God, why are you doing this? It's been 1 year that we've been engaged. I'm in the U.S., he's in Jamaica. This is no way to live, And I sat there, and the Lord started to minister to me. He said, I'm going to do this my way. And in that moment, I got a message from a sister that's all the way in the Cayman Islands. She said to me, Latoya, I'm here right now. And the Spirit of the Lord just said to message you. He said, whatever you are about to do, just go ahead. The approval is granted. And we were there talking about just moving forward with the wedding, just getting it together. And, we love the number 7. My husband is June 7th. He proposed June 17th. I'm June 27th. And so we're like, okay, we need to plan a date that will, of course, have the 7th in it. And this was around July of 2015. And so we were there. And this was around July 2016. And so we were there. We're like, okay, what can we do that's going to be short? And we came up with August. So this is just less than basically a month to plan a wedding. So August 27th, 2016. We look at each other, okay, we must be crazy. We must be losing our minds to think that we can plan a wedding in a month. And we said, okay, of course, finances, what do you have? This is where everything comes to the table now. Is really crazy now. We want you to step in. If you're giving me the approval to move forward, you're giving us the approval to move forward, then if you have a vision for us, then that means you're going to make the provision. And the short of it is, everything came together. The wedding was very beautiful. I had persons just be calling me, the Lord placed you in my spirit, and I'm going to take care of the photographer. I'm going to be taking care of the food. I'm going to be taking care of the decor. At one point, I was like, God, what is this? He said, I am doing this. This is me. And everything came together. The dress, everything came together within a month with a budget that was, can you see this? Yes. And we stood there on our wedding day, and we're like, what is this? And God continued to speak. He said, listen, I'm doing this. I am doing this. And I'm not saying that, you're having a wedding or you're planning a wedding and you're just going to be depending on God. This is just a unique grace. This is just so unique that God, and then there are many persons out there that they'll have testimonies of how God really showed up for them, like really showed out for them big time. And so that's just a small part of the testimony, but it's just, I'm just being grateful even now to see the hand of God in the midst of it all. And I remember on that day of our wedding, as I stood outside, where we stood under the open heavens and everything felt still. And I felt this presence, and I knew that angels were all around and they were celebrating, they were rejoicing. And God said, yes, this is it. Finally, what has been released in the realms, what has been manifested, what has been written before you were even born is now being manifested in the earth realm. And I'm ready to do and release my purpose through you because of your obedience. And so we said yes. And there are so many other things, and I want to talk about this too, because my yes to God, when I started to live for him in such deep level, intimacy was another hard thing for me, just to give myself away to my husband, because I was living so much for God. Yes, my life was so transformed, where I was like living a burning bush experience. I was just in this vacuum, this realm where it was just about the Spirit of God. And so even that conversation, I had to really sit down with my husband and let him know exactly where I'm at. We got married. 3 months after our wedding date, I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit. I had a dream that blew my mind. And that's where everything really birthed in terms of this Undiluted Love Ministry. In that dream, the Lord showed me marriages. He showed me men and women coming together. He showed me an entire community where he's in the midst doing the reconnection, the restoration. He's in the midst where he's rekindling love, and undiluted love is God. He is the base of this. We cannot love. Listen, if we don't know God, we don't know love, because God is love. And if we don't love ourselves, we can't love others. And so that's the essence of what God wants to do in this vision. He was just saying, listen, I want my people to be restored to the place where it's all about me first. It's about me, God. I want them to see me. I want them to love me for me. And I want to open up their lives to a place where they're operating their full purpose. And he started to show me different things. And I remember walking through, and I saw what seemed to be like a wedding. I saw all white, everyone dressed in white. I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. And he said to me, I want you to do this, and I want you to have retreats. I want you to have seminars. I want you to, from all nations, just allow persons to come together where I'm in the midst of it. When I woke up that morning, it was around after 4. My mother apparently woke up at the same time. And because I was started, it was the vision, everything was just so detailed. And I just started to write. And she heard me shuffling. She said, are you okay? And I shared with her what happened. And the short of it is, I started to question God. I said, God, I've just been married 3 months. Yes, I've known my husband since I was 15, 16 years old. He's the first guy I've ever been with. And I know that you're saying that you've called us for such a time as this, but you're asking me to initiate a communities, a ministry that's about marriage, that's about love and relationship. First of all, especially in the church, normally a marriage ministry is you have persons that are behind this that have been in marriage for years. They are veterans in this, and I'm just 3 months. Like, what are you saying? And then he reminds me, he said, who I predestined, I call them, and who I call, I justify, and who I justify, I glorify. And I'm like, God, are you serious? He said, I want you to do this. For me, honestly, it was hard. And I know many of you have been given visions. God has given you instructions and assignments, and you are questioning him about your qualification, about where you are. For me, I'm like, okay, I'm no counselor. I don't have any clinical studies. I don't know anything about psychology. I don't know, and I would say I'm fairly new to this level of faith where I'm walking in truth. I'm walking in purpose. So what are you doing? And so the truth is, I shared it with my husband. And, he's a go when it comes to anything concerning God. And he said, okay, babes, let's pray about this some more. And this was around the November. And the following year, that's 2017, I remember I was in Spain. I went to Spain on a school trip. And when I was there, the Lord ministered to me very heavily. My husband at the time, I wanted him to celebrate our first anniversary with me in Florida. And so we decided just to go back to the embassy. Yes, we did that. And while he was there at the embassy, I remember I got a call from a sister in Canada, and she said to me, I don't know what is happening in your life right now, but the Lord just said to tell you that he will not approve that which you and your husband are doing until you walk in your true purpose. And I'm like, are you serious? Are you going to tell me a no again for the visa? And so right after I got a message from my husband, babes, it's a no again. I said, I know. We got to do God's work. And so we definitely decided that we're going to do this. But this is where it gets real juicy, because this is by the May of 2017. And so I decided that, you know what? Babes, let's just do this. So I returned to Florida in around the early part of June. We reached out to a few of his friends, because there are many times where the Lord will give us an assignment and we want to actually twist the hand of God somewhat and, try to trick God. But God is all knowing. He knows the innermost part of our being. There's nothing that can be hidden from him. He searches us. He searches the innermost parts of all of us. And so I remember when my husband and I, we decided we're going to move forward. So he reached out to a few of his friends. He said, hey, we have this vision and we want to move forward. We want to do a love marriage retreat where couples can come together. So we reached out to around 5 of his friends. That would be like, 10 persons. And then including us would be a dozen persons. And we're like, yeah, that would be good. And so we created a little poster. We put it out there on social media. But in the back of our mind, we were basically holding the strings on this, because we already have in the back of our mind who will be there. And the Lord was just sitting back like, look at these kids, what are they doing? And so it was around early part of July that they all reached out and they said, listen, we're not able to be part of this. We have other plans. We were very disappointed in our flesh. We were so sad. We were like, okay, here it is that we're trying to just kind of scoop our way out of this. And the Lord said to us, it's not our way, but his way. We need to trust him. And we have already set the date for the retreat to be in the same weekend of our anniversary. This would have been our first anniversary. That's crazy, right? But God said that's what he wanted. And so we went ahead and we started to promote some more on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm like, okay, God, I don't know how you're going to do this. I don't know anyone to invite as a speaker, because I know that we're supposed to be facilitators, just to host this event and just to get everything pumping. And I remember where the Lord just started to allow everything to come together. I was invited to a wedding in Palm Beach. And when I was there, the photographer, she heard me just talking to the sister who invited me about this retreat, about this vision. She didn't say anything at the moment. But when a day after that, I got a message on Facebook and she said to me, I listened to what you were saying, and there was this still voice that spoke to me. He said, you need to support this. And this is one of the top photographers in the Orlando area. And, she deals with weddings. And she said, listen, you don't have to pay me to do anything. I'll just come down to Jamaica and I'll get this done. And I'm like, okay, God, all right. He said, that's me. And it continued. Following weekend, I went to a conference in Fort Lauderdale. And while I was there, I walked in very late. And I sat at the back. And the Lord started to minister to me. He said, there's one of your speaker. Then he said, there's another speaker. I'm like, God, how am I going to do that? Where am I going to get money to fly people down to Jamaica and have, and I mean, these are authors, these are persons that are well known. And he said, I'm going to do it. And I walked up to them after and I shared it with them. And they were like, wow, I feel God in all this. I want to be part of it. Don't worry about anything. It's okay. I'm like, God, what's going on? And everything started to come together. The speakers, the photographers, and everything. And I'm like, okay, God, so who will be coming to this retreat now? I need people. And I remember I got a message on Instagram, and a young lady said to me, I saw your marketing, your publication, and I want to be part of this. I've been waiting on something like this all my life. And so I said, okay, sure. And person started to reach out. But there was something that stood out to me because everything, the detail, the agenda, the Lord downloaded what needs to happen on the first day, the second day, even the dress code, everything, the theme. He would just lay it all out to me. And I was in awe. I'm like, wow, God, you're so amazing. I remember in the dream that I had, there was just white. There was just all white, and this was like the final day. And he said, this is what I want to happen. The short of it is, this same young lady that reached out to me, she said to me, I was speaking to God and he said to me, it's okay to get married at your retreat. I'm like, wow, so you're engaged? He said, yes, I've been engaged for a while and we're planning to get married in January 2018. But God is saying, go ahead. But she said, I have one request of you. Do you mind if all the participants wear white to the wedding? I said to her, it's already approved. All that you're saying to me is what God has already shown me. And so I know this is the will of God. And, you'll be hearing from this couple as they will be in our next segment. They'll be telling us what God has spoken into their spirit and how this beautiful wedding that happened on our first anniversary. Yes, we shared our anniversary on the 27th of August. That was the final day of the first marriage retreat that was held in Jamaica. And in that moment, the Lord said to me, this is it. I've called you to do this. So since then, the Lord has allowed a community of marriages, community of women, wives, even those that are single, that are yearning to hear the voice of God, to hear what He's saying, to hear what their identity, because you need to know your true identity even before going into marriage. And even for those that have gone ahead of God, God is saying, listen, it's time for you to slow down and know who you are so you can operate in that place where He has called you. We'll be hearing from couples and those that have been touched by this ministry, those that have been restored, those that the Lord really has been speaking to in regards to undiluted love, the true love of God. So join me next time. Again, I am Latoya Clarke Grant, and this is the Undiluted Love Show.